Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Classic Live Album War. We've got, once again, in the co-host chair, Mr. Jeff Young. Say hello to everybody, JY.
Hola.
Great to have Jeff on again. Today, we've got a really special live album battle. In fact, when I first posed this particular combo to Jeff, he is like, that is just so rude. Because it's... two favorite albums. I mean, two favorite albums by two players that I know Jeff loves to death. And there's a reason why I picked this particular battle. And let's first introduce our two combatants. So, Jeff, why don't you hold up the first one there? We've got Pat Travers Band Live, Go For What You Know.
And that was literally my only response when he suggested this duo was, that's so rude. So let's look at the back. I mean,
yeah, you got to.
Just beastly players on that. You got Pat Thrall's now living in Vegas. He's my friend on Facebook. His daughter's also a guitar player. You got the wicked savage Tommy Aldridge, who did his time with Ozzy in the Randy Rhoads era, of course.
Currently in Whitesnake.
Came out of Black Oak, Arkansas. Mars Calling on the funky and festive bass, and of course that's a great picture of Pat down there.
It is, yeah.
And he's Music Without Boundaries radio show guest alumni.
That's right. That's right.
He appeared on our show on his birthday when he could have been out with his beautiful wife doing just about anything, and he took the time for our show and our listeners. So in my book, he's about as cool as they come.
There you go.
So anxious to but Johnny Winter's also my favorite blues player. So
there you go. So of course on the other end of the ring, we've got Johnny Winter and Live. So of course this is the Johnny Winter and Band, and of course featuring Rick Derringer, right, on co-lead guitar and vocals. We got Randy Joe Hobbs on vocals and bass, and the legendary Bobby Caldwell on drums. So there's a reason why I chose these two to kind of be in this discussion. And, you know, I had all sorts of people on our Facebook page and on the YouTube page saying, oh, we want to see Pat Travers versus Frank Marino, or Pat Travers versus Ted Nugent, or Pat Travers versus Robin Trower. But the reason why I chose these two is because here you have two very notable guitar legends. And for these two bands, they packed the lineup with some of the best players that either one ever had. So both Pat and Johnny got two excellent co-lead guitar players to sit alongside them. The drummers are great and the bass players are great. So there's kind of a little bit of a parallel here, even though one album is more of like a hard rock album, the other is more like kind of like a bluesy album, but they're both really great. The Johnny Winter album released in 71, and the Pat Travers album was at 79, Jeff, I think it was, right at the end of the decade.
The print's small, buddy. Let me get back to you on that.
79. I see it on the CD. 79. Yeah. So again, 8 years apart, but I think there's a lot of parallels here and some smoking co-lead guitar work on both albums. So Jeff's going to kick us off and talk a little bit about the Pat Travers live album, which I mean I grew up with as well, and it's well ingrained in my soul. I'm sure Jeff's got a lot of commentary he's going to add on that.
When we did the Tommy Bolin show, I mentioned a buddy of mine, a roommate that I had, who was doing a Tommy Bolin tribute before tribute bands were a thing back in the 70s. And that was his two big guys. He sang really close, and he knew every song by Tommy Bolin off Teasers and Private Eyes, and Pat Travers. And he sang a lot like Pat Travers. So I got some deep exposure to all the early Travers stuff. And my first battle of the bands, our band was called Iron Cross, and we did April Wine, I Wanna Rock, Rush, Spirit of Radio, and Pat Travers Stevie of all songs. And I'm going to talk about that tune. We got to talk about that, but we'll rewind back to the beginning of side one with Hooked on Music. Just amazing. I mean, every track on side one's killer, Getting Better, Go All Night. And of course, the classic radio staple, boom, boom, out go the lights. And I think side one is cool.
It is, but
for me, it's not till side two that things really kick in the high gear. Even though Stevie starts off moody, it's just a very trippy song. The riff is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to Jeff Watson's guitar solo and Don't Tell Me You Love Me by Night Ranger, after Brad goes through, he goes, it's just a sped up version of the intro of Stevie. All right. So I can hear some Pat Travers influence with Jeff Watson. I love that tune. That's, I think, one of the greatest slow, heavy rock tunes of that era. And then you got Making Magic, that's just out of hand, and Heat in the Street, which is even more out of hand and makes no difference. Produced by Pat Travers and Tom Allen.
Right, from Judas Priest.
This album is great. It's a great sound. Guitar tones maybe a little bright, could be a little more low end on the guitars, but it's a beautiful, I think it's up there with the greatest single, because, you know, a lot of albums you've been talking about this month, and usually one of the tricks that they pulled back in the day to get people to buy the live albums was it was always a double. Like Kiss Alive was a double, the REO Speedwagon, The Journey, these are all double albums. But of course, like the Frank Marino was a single, and this is a single.
The Robin Trower also. Foghat, the Foghat one was a single, yeah.
That's a killer album, that Foghat live.
Oh yeah,
beastly.
So could the Pat Travers have been a double, right? Could have, I guess.
Just based off the discography on those early Pat Travers albums, I could have used more stuff off Putting It Straight.
Yep.
On here. But definitely just an admirable outing. I love it.
For my money, the worst song on the album is "Boom Boom Out Go the Lights," because I have like
say, but I didn't say. So thanks for saying.
I'll take it, because I know there's going to be a lot of people like, "Oh, I love that song." It's like, you know what? It was cool the first like 50 times I heard it. Man, I never need to hear that song again. But
I'd rather hear "Crash and Burn," baby.
Hell yeah, there's a lot of songs I'd rather hear. But I will say, and we've talked about it a lot in this series, a great live album should have the definitive versions of a lot of songs. And for me, and it's very similar to like UFO Strangers in the Night, a lot of those tunes on that album, those are the definitive versions of those songs. That is absolutely the case with this. Every tune on here is the best version of that particular song. And man, Hooked on Music makes no difference. It's like one of my favorite Pat Travers tunes. Stevie is absolutely amazing on here. I absolutely agree with you on that. And it's just, with the exception of Boom Boom, for me, man, it's all killer, no filler, and just sizzling guitar interplay between these two dudes. Just uncanny. And the whole band is just great. I love it. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
The guitar interplay. Again, Pat Thrall is a hugely underrated player. Of course, we could throw out the Hughes Thrall album.
Yep.
Thing for people to check out after they get done listening to some Go For What You Know.
How about that Automatic Man stuff? That's great too.
I know you turned me on to it. I mean, I knew it, but you sent it over to me, so I actually have it and can play it on the radio show now.
Yeah, that's some underrated Pat Thrall stuff. So a great album, one of the best live albums, and like Jeff mentioned, easily one of the top 5 single disc or single LP live albums. So on the other end of the spectrum, right on the other end of the ring, we've got this blistering set from Johnny Winter and Company. You know, Johnny Winter's got the 2 great live albums, this one and then the Captured album. They're both great, different bands on both. This only has 6 tunes, a lot of jamming on here. You know, it's a little bit different where the Travers, I think, is a little tighter as far as the arrangements, but some great like covers on here. You've got a knockout Good Morning Little Schoolgirl, you know, with Johnny and Rick just blazing away. Then you've got It's My Own Fault, another great, great blues rock tune. A killer version of Jumpin' Jack Flash by the Stones. Really strong, a lot of fun. And then you've got track number 4 is that medley. You got Great Balls of Fire, Long Tall Sally, whole lot of shaking going on. You know, we've talked a lot in the last week or so about a lot of these 70s rock bands who were doing like medleys in their sets of like these old school, rock and roll tracks. I think probably Johnny does that stuff better than anybody, or did that stuff better than anybody else. I would much rather hear Johnny playing like 50s and early 60s rock tunes, early rock songs, than like Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, or Led Zeppelin doing them, or the Scorpions. I think in Johnny's hands, and especially this band, those songs really come to life. Then you've got Meantown Blues, and then a killer, legendary version of Johnny Be Good. Again, Johnny was just such an amazing blues player. Rick could do blues and hard rock. I love the lengthy "It's My Own Fault" slow blues. It's just awesome. I mean, it's just maybe not as iconic an album as the Travers, but if you love bluesy guitar playing by a master, it doesn't get much better than this. I mean, I know you got a love for Johnny, so I know you want to talk a little bit about this album.
Oh, whoa. Well, I got to see him live in Sarasota, Florida at the Blues Festival several years back. And, it was outside, and he's obviously an albino. He came out, it was almost like a mole in the sunlight. He couldn't barely take the sunlight. And he had that little thin, like Steinberger looking headless guitar.
Yep.
He just proceeded to blow doors down. Like, he became my favorite blues player that day. And I've seen a lot of great blues players, and there are, and I studied with one of the greatest, Steve Hunter, but there was just something like, even when he didn't even have to look at the guitar, and even when it would seem like he was going to go off the rails on a certain part or maybe out of key, he'd bend that note right in key, and just, he has a way of spinning anything into gold licks wise. I mean,
yeah.
And I got to see him. He was a little younger then. And I definitely recommend the documentary they just released late in his life. It's really, really cool. I own that. And it's another poignant story of a great blues artisan. I mean, he's really a pioneer of, more than just blues, but rock and roll. And what she, said about his covers, I think the Jumping Jack Flash is,
it's
It's
good.
off the hook. And
it is.
The first thing that struck me, like in comparison to the Pat Travers, when I was listening to it this morning, is like the first track, like the guitars when they're doing, it's a little chaotic and, maybe not as tight a guitar playing as you had with Thrall and Travers. But I love Derringer. And there was another single live album, the Derringer Live.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. A whole show talking about that record. That's amazing.
Yep, it is. Derringer's a great player.
I love him. I love Johnny. There's other Johnny stuff I think I like better. And I've seen him live in person. So I'd go with the Pat Travers album and the live performance of Johnny I saw in Florida, and call it a day.
There you go. That's all you need, right? I got to meet Johnny about a year before he passed.
I saw the picture.
Yeah. I was on his tour bus. He actually was playing locally, and I didn't get to see the performance. I've never seen him live, actually, but I have met him. So he was doing a signing in Middletown, New York at Rock Fantasy, my friend Steve Keeler's place. And I got to go meet him and have him autograph. In fact, I should have brought out what he autographed. I have it on the shelf. But, it was late. He was not very well at that point in time. He barely talked, but it was just cool to meet him nonetheless. But a great player who's got a lot of really killer albums. And so, Jeff and I think are both in agreement on this one. I'm going to go with the Pat Travers Go For What You Know live album, again, because I have a lot of history with this, and I love this to death, though. I really do. I think if I want a little more like long-form jamming, this is the one to get, a little more bluesy, but there's some just absolute guitar wizardry on this one. The tunes are tight, and these are Travers' best tunes and the best versions of them. So for me, it's going to inch out over Johnny Winter and live just a little bit, I think. But this is top shelf. Easily one of my favorite live albums of all time. So, but everybody likes different stuff. So I'm sure there's some of you out there that might prefer the Johnny album. Maybe some of you can't decide. doesn't really matter, right? But it's just a cool time to discuss two really great live albums. But you do have the option to vote. So in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see a little balloon there with an eye in it. Click on that. You'll be able to pick either the Johnny Winter or the Pat Travers album. You can also vote on our Facebook page because we're going to be running the poll up there too. So we'll see which one of these makes it to the second round. We've got a lot more live album battles coming up, and before we even get to round two. But we're starting to see some of the winners pop up, and some surprising, some not so surprising. So, Jeff, I don't know how closely you've been keeping in touch with our live album battles, but you have any predictions for a handful of albums that you think are going to make it all the way to the end of the tournament that'll be going against each other when it's all said and done?
Oh, have you thrown Yes songs out there yet?
Yeah, they won their round.
That's up there with me. You threw Strangers in the Night, so
all
those are going to make it.
Yep, that one, Made in Japan. Yep.
This is my pick for today.
There you go.
The Johnny Winter documentary is called Down and Dirty. Have you seen that, Pete?
I have not, no.
Highly recommended.
Yeah, I will check that out.
It's poignant. I mean, it's made a little later in his life, but really cool. And all props to Johnny, greatest blues artisan in my book. But for this day, I'll pick that. And those are my desert island live albums. I think Strangers in the Night, UFO, Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous, the REO Speedwagon, You Get What You Play For, Yes songs.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good ones out there.
There's
so many good ones.
Frank Marino.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more like double, like real big packages.
Kiss Alive is one for me. I mean, that's,
Well, that was my first. That's what corrupted me.
Deep Purple, Made in Japan's another one. There's so many great ones.
For Christmas was Kiss Alive, and my mom was mortified.
It's like, why do you want that garbage? These guys with the ugly makeup and yeah, well, that's what we're into, right? So anyway, Jeff, why don't you let everybody know what's kind of going on with you? What do you have coming up? I know you got a lot of things happening right now, so fill everybody in.
Tuesday night, Music Without Boundaries, 7-Eleven on the New York time zone. Hollywood is 4:11, and whatever time you are, you can listen live from anywhere on the planet at jeffyoungjams.com. Working on my instrumental follow-up to Monsoon. It's called Slow Burn. Stay tuned for that, but that's on the back burner right now because my lead singer, Hell's Bells, she's the thunder from down under, as they say. She's a force of nature. She's a musical machine. She just wrote a song this week that blows my mind that I turned you on to that, but we're finishing. We're already got half of our record written and we've only known each other like 3 weeks, but we'll be dropping our first single. It's called In the Flesh. And the release date is October 11th. And I'm going to Dayton here end of September I'm meeting Hells over there. She's flying in from Australia. We're going to finish the track, hopefully do a music video and do some live shows and stuff in the Dayton, Ohio area. So if you're around that area, find us. Find us on Facebook. It's fleshymusic.com, and our YouTube. So controversial that we had to buy a URL that's facebookcensorsourBand.com. I think they mistook our Fleshy for some other kind of Fleshy TV.
I guess so. It's nothing bad about the name Fleshy, but hey, whatever. That's the society we live in today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, a lot going on with Jeff. We're looking forward to all that. And I think you'll be seeing Jeff here on Sea of Tranquility again in the very, very near future, as always. So, Jeff, thanks a lot for joining. We appreciate it. So remember, guys, vote for your favorite between Johnny Winter and Pat Travers, either here or on the Facebook page. We'll see which one makes it to the next round. And we've got a lot more of these classic live album wars coming up in the days and weeks ahead. So stay tuned and a lot more programming. And we'll see you again. For Jeff Young, I am Pete Pardo. Jeff, say goodbye to everybody.
Peace out, people. Blessings.